You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family. Well, this is Glenn the Geek, founder of the Horse Radio Network and host of Horses in the Morning, the daily podcast that we've been doing now for over 4,000 episodes. Welcome to the WESA Retail Roundup. The Retail Roundup is your go-to virtual hub for all things retail. Join panel discussions, learn from webinars, share your thoughts, ask questions, and connect with your community. We host a virtual event or share a new podcast with you every Thursday. Today, we're talking about sales reps, and boy, is it an appropriate time to do that with WESA coming up next week. So we're going to talk about what role do they play in today's world and how can you utilize them better. Today we have with us Sarah Weint, sales rep at Shires Equestrian. She has been a rep at various companies for well over a decade. Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Glenn. How are you?
Are you packed yet? Ready for next week?
We're getting there. Yes, it's coming up so quickly. It really is. It's always a good time, though.
You know, Shires, I remember over the years, I mean, this goes back a long time, has won the best booth many times at the show because you have such a pretty booth.
Yeah. No, we're really excited. We love going to the show. We love to see everybody. And we're more excited now we have the new permanent showroom at WESA. So it's been really fun to outfit that and entertain our retailers there.
Does it make it easier for the reps to have the permanent showroom?
Oh, absolutely.
You don't have to set up and tear down.
Yeah. We are enjoying, like I said, serving, some food and drink to everybody and welcoming them all in. And it does cut down a lot on your setup and tear down time for sure. You just lock the doors and see you next time. So
that's a rep's dream right there.
It is. But I see a lot of people have been taking advantage of doing the permanent showrooms there. And it's great to see everybody kind of investing in it. And it's fun to look at all of the other showrooms and see how they're doing things as well.
So when did you start as a rep?
I started in 2011. Yeah. Okay. And I worked for JPC Equestrian for a few years there. Yep. And then now I've been with Shires almost 10 years. Next spring is my 10-year mark. Yeah. And
for those that don't know, just give a quick rundown on what Shires sells.
So Shires is a family-owned company. They're over 50 years old in the UK. Over here in the United States, they probably, I want to say about 2008, 2009 is when you kind of first started to see Shires products here. Most people think of horse blankets, and that's kind of like their founding product.
Yep,
so I think, when you mention Shires, you think of horse blankets. Yeah, so they really have built up the blanket collections, and people seem to really know that. However, we are lucky enough that we have a lot of different products in many different categories. So, now they've expanded us into selling, strap goods and footwear and apparel and stable supplies. We just recently got into doing helmets, which has been a really good category as well.
Now, so tech is changing rapidly now. We talk about that a lot on this show, not just AI, but tech in general. And Shopify, all of that has changed rapidly. How's the role of the sales rep changed because of tech?
Well, I think, now people are kind of relying a little bit more on sales reps to get them like the material that they need in order to advance in some of those areas, like you just mentioned, like Shopify and building their own website, social media. So I think, we end up providing more, marketing material for them. We, kind of get them set up in our image portal so they can access all these images. I think also kind of just knowing what is out there and like with influencers. And it's funny that you asked me these questions because everybody in the company jokes that I'm like the least techie person. And also I'm not on Instagram and I'm not on TikTok and I'm definitely more old school, but I understand that those are all of the things that are up and coming, and we need to help support our retailers in order to, sell product on there and, get them what they need.
I was wondering if that's becoming more of a role for you guys as the whole social media side of things.
Yeah. I mean, doing videos, I think, that kind of started, during COVID too, like when, people were starting to do their live sales on, Facebook and, selling product that way. And I think now that just has become like the norm. And then also just talking about products, giving, features and benefits of certain things, and all of these influencers that are, doing unboxing videos and saying how much they, like the product, giving their own testimonials. Those are all things that'll help the retailers, sell those products in their stores.
So do you think going into the future that you're going to have to get more techie, that will become more of a role?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm going to have to finally conform, and I'm going to have to finally get on Instagram so I can see what's happening.
I resisted too. Yes, I
know my coworkers love to pick on me for that, and that's okay. I'm definitely, like I said, more old school. And I agree. Like I think that is where everybody's focused on. It was just to give you an example. I was at a show over the weekend with one of my customers, and all of these young girls were coming in and shopping, and I'd say, "Oh, I love your belt," or whatever, and they say, "Oh, it's on the TikTok shop," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, that's I don't know that. I'm not on there." Yeah, I don't have that, but I get it. Like that's where people are shopping and looking for product and things like that. But I'm still a proponent of the catalog, I should say. Yes.
We talk, we've had influencers on here, and we talk about the use of influencers from the retail side and the manufacturing side several times in this show. And I guess in a way, us podcasters, we just had an anniversary for Horse Radio Network for 18 years. And I think we were kind of the first ones that were influencing. I don't know if I like the word influencers, but I have a better one. Do you guys find that they're becoming more effective for retailers and wholesalers?
Yes, I do. I mean, we've taken advantage of that ourselves and, signed on with some influencers and given them product, and it works. It really does. And I think you can still do the old school methods and still have paper catalogs and things like that. But I think when somebody's looking up a product real quickly, like they're going on TikTok, they're going on Facebook, they're going on Instagram, and
YouTube.
I think and YouTube, and YouTube, and if these influencers, these are girls that are out and, riding and competing, and then all it takes is for, one other person to see she's riding in this or using this horse boot or this saddle pad, and then they go to their local tack store and, they want to buy it. So I think, and then it's our job too, then to, help a retailer stock that item and say, this is why you should stock it, and give all the features and benefits and things like that.
We did a survey recently. We do them every 2 years with our listeners, and it's been the same for the last 10 years. And 80% of our listeners have bought a product that Jamie and I have recommended on Horses in the Morning in the past year. Only 25% have bought something from a banner ad or a magazine.
Wow.
And that just goes to show you that I don't care how you feel about influencers, the people that follow them consider them friends. So when they recommend something, when Jamie and I say, hey, this is something that you should buy, one, we've tested it. We know it works. And it's a friend telling you, even though you've never met that person. Mm-hmm. It is effective. I know people resist the whole influencer thing, quote unquote, but there's a reason that they have 1 million followers. So beyond just taking orders, what do you consider the primary role of what you do as a rep?
Well, I think, talking with my retailers, one of the first things that they like to tell me that, is what they appreciate and they like is when the reps know their products. I think that, giving the features, the benefits, the prices, I know sometimes, when you have sales reps that, have a lot of different lines, that can be hard because you're dealing with, different companies and, it's a lot to remember for sure. But just, I think in general, just knowing things that will help that retailer sell that product better. I think that they appreciate that. They appreciate just any little sales tip that they can have to pass on to the consumer is something great for them.
Are you guys still traveling to stores as much in-person visits, or is that slowing down?
Well, I think, it really depends on the company, I guess. For us, we have a couple of employees and we have a couple of independents. So all across the U.S., I have a very large territory. I cover approximately 13 states. So it's a lot to cover. I think that some manufacturers are cutting back maybe a little bit on sending people out. I think Zoom calls still can be very effective. I will say myself, I do have a handful of stores that are more than willing to do a Zoom call to, look at product if we're doing some bookings. Apparel is hard. It's harder on Zooms. You can't, try it on. You can't feel it. You can't touch it. But I appreciate from the sales rep side that, if there's just no way I can potentially see this person in the next 2 weeks or something like that, or they're just busy, then, hey, we can jump on a Zoom real quick and at least you can, view some of the new products that we have. So I think it really depends on the company, whether or not they think it's, beneficial to have people out, all the time. I think my retailers really appreciate that, I come and see them, as much as I can. They are also understand I have a big territory, so they get it. It's hard.
So that leads to the next question. How can stores better utilize you as a rep or reps in general? Is there an area that they're not utilizing you that they should be?
Well, I think that when, we make an appointment, we're coming to town, I think, it's good to get the most out of us, especially for me when I'm flying maybe to a territory and I'm only, I'm going to be there for just a few days and, I set up an appointment with somebody, they know, I'm only there for a certain amount of time and let's, kind of get the most out of me. So we should talk about new product. We should, maybe do some videos, maybe do something that they could use on their own website or social media, things like that. I know some of my stores have started to record when I come in and show a new line and they use it as a preview. We're previewing spring 27 and our rep is here and, just taking some video and photos of the pieces just for up and coming stuff. It gets the consumer engaged. They want to know then, they're like, oh, we're going to have to look for that, when spring comes. I think also, doing events and helping your retailers, which I have always said, if my retailer has an event that they're going to and they would like to take some Shires products and, have me come in and assist with the selling, and be in a little spot, whether it's focusing on a certain category of things like footwear or helmets. I think that is also a good way to use your sales reps, if they're available to come to an event, such as an equine affair or a congress or just a local show. Like I said, I was at a local show this past weekend. It was a fair and it was a great turnout. There were tons of entries and lots of Shires products there. And then I guess the next thing, which does, I think, it's something that most reps have, done for years, is doing inventory. Helping with that and seeing oh, you're out of this. And this is one of our top sellers. We need to make sure you have that all the time.
Can you get reports now that shows what they've sold and what they should have on hand?
Our system right now does not have that, but I mean, it does show what our Shire system, we can see what obviously they have purchased and things like that. A lot of my retailers do have that, whatever system they're using. If, I'm coming to town and they know I'm coming, they will, pull a report before I get there to show, what they've sold.
A little different than the old days when the reps used to have to stand in the store and count stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it depends on the store. It really does. Just like me, there are some stores that are more old school, and then there are other ones that are oh, we'll just run a report, no worries. So either way,
and we both know those inventory reports are not accurate anyway.
Well, that's
I don't
the
care
other
how
thing,
hard
yes.
we try; they never are accurate.
So it's always good to have a backup,
I don't know where that stuff goes, but it goes somewhere.
Yeah.
That's never changed in 40 years. Is that problem?
Right.
I think it's a little better.
I mean, just top sellers too. It's just, I mean, and that's something I can send my stores frequently. We have a top sellers list all the time, and obviously it can vary depending on the season when you get seasonal products mixed in there sometimes, but for the most part, our core items are usually staying the same. And we usually like to say everybody should have these.
I don't know if you belong to the Equine Retailers page, Facebook, that June runs, but
yeah.
One of the things, you see them on there too. I was looking back through the posts about reps, and usually the complaints from retailers are lack of communication. And I think, I think that's, again, in any category, you're going to have people good at their job and people who are not as good.
Right.
And it usually involves, product being delayed and things like that. It's something you have no control over, but communication still is the key to keeping people happy, right? I mean, it's still the key, whether it's good news or bad news.
Right, exactly. Obviously there's a lot of different methods, people can get a hold of me, and I like to say, like, I use all of them. Actually, I've got, stores that text, stores that call, stores that email, and some we use Facebook Messenger, and it's fine. Whatever works for that particular customer. I think, the reps, kind of know. I've been lucky enough that I've had a lot of my retailers for many years as accounts. So I've really, developed good relationships with them, and I know, what they need or don't need or like or don't want or that sort of thing. So, I have some people that are just fine, with a text message like, hey, don't forget we're doing a free freight deal this week, that sort of thing. So I think it's really up to the reps to kind of, figure out and kind of read each of their accounts to know how to kind of work with that particular person. But no question is too small. I say, anybody can, reach me anytime if you've got a question, especially if you're at a horse show. A lot of my mobile, customers will be at a show and they need to know if something's, available right away, that sort of thing. And I get that, it's on site and it's instant and, the customer's right there.
What's one of the biggest mistakes you see retailers making? It maybe not even directly involving reps, but just making in general. You see them, you see what happens, right? You see also the ones that don't make it, and we've seen quite a few of those. So
right.
What do you see as the biggest mistake? I have a guess, but...
Well, I do think that, there's a couple things. And I think sometimes, what works for one retailer may not work for another. So I think sometimes people have to kind of figure that out on their own, what might work for a mobile unit as far as, the way that they set up their customers or the way that they do their social media. Maybe it's different than a brick and mortar. It's kind of different. But I do think, just the stores communicating with us. I also think sometimes, and I think this is something that, Rose, who's a longtime account of mine of Equus now, and she has also said that sometimes, stores will have too many vendors and that kind of overwhelms them. And they're constantly trying to keep up with, all the big and the small vendors
she was on with me not too long ago, and she said she did say that. That was
I think sometimes it's good too. And I'm not saying, don't buy, again, what works for one might not work for the other. But in general, if you can really narrow down to some, top vendors with top performing products and just kind of, get everything. And, that's why I do love Shires, is because we have so many things in so many different categories. You can buy a helmet and then you can buy a blanket. And, I think that really helps the retailers kind of stay focused and say, okay, this is our weekly order or our monthly order or whatever. Dealing with a lot of vendors, it can get very overwhelming. And then you kind of get distracted sometimes, from ordering from your key people. And like Rose said, she, kind of trimming things down definitely helps kind of keep you sane too, and so I would say it's, again, not necessarily a mistake, but just maybe a suggestion, for some of those retailers.
And what do you wish they would do? What's something that retailers could do to better work with their reps?
I think they could communicate with us sometimes too a little more. I mean, I've seen that on ERRT too, that it kind of ERRT, it kind of goes both ways.
Yep.
And, I like to think that I'm pretty readily available, but there's definitely times where, I will send an email to somebody and I won't hear from them ever, and I get it, it's hard, especially stores that are doing shows and they're on the road and, they're being, pulled in so many different directions, emails get missed. We all understand. But if, I like to say, if I haven't heard back from somebody and I am comfortable texting that person, then I would shoot them a message and say like, hey, did you check your email? That sort of thing. And I think it kind of goes both ways. I think, stores can sometimes also let us know just with a hey, saw your email, that sort of thing. And, if they don't need anything at this time, that's great. Or, if they need to place an order. But it's hard, everybody, we're all doing this, for the same reasons. We love to do this. We love to do the horses, the industry, all of that. But people are busy and it's tough sometimes. So
and I'm sure this is probably getting more of them, is there's retailers that they don't want to be bothered. They just want to place their orders and they want it to all work, right?
Right. So, right. And that goes, and that goes back to
they don't want to talk to anybody. They just want to. They don't want to talk to anybody.
No, and that goes back to what I was saying as far as knowing those specific stores. And like I said, if you're lucky enough to work with some retailers like I have for a really long time, then you do know them, and that person just wants to place an order and they don't need anything else. But then on the opposite of that, there are others that, need a little bit more from you, and, just have to kind of be up for getting everybody what they need.
I know nowadays I would rather that I don't have to call anybody anymore. Just,
right.
If I can do it on their website or whatever. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. And I think that is another evolving thing with the industry too, is when I first started repping, that was kind of first when online, you could place orders online. That was just kind of starting with some of the manufacturers. And now obviously that's commonplace. Like everybody has that. And I have those stores that will just do the online, ordering on the vendor portal. No worries. Send their order. That's it. And then I have other people that say, I'd prefer to talk to you, and I said, that whatever works, really whatever works.
Very good. So what advice do you have for people maybe that are heading the first time into WESA, next week? What advice do you have for the first timers?
The first timers. I've sold I do have a handful of stores that they have not attended yet since it's been in Dallas. And I keep saying, you got to come, you got to come.
Go.
I said, it's so
like
different. It is. It's so different. And I do, say, I said, you're probably going to be a little bit overwhelmed. Your first time there. I said, but come with a plan. Only a little, but come with a plan. Come with a plan and make appointments. Again, I have some stores that just prefer not to make an appointment. They'd rather wander around. And if that works for them and they've been doing this for how many years, then great. But I say with a new person, I think it's best to going into this for the first time is kind of setting a plan, make some appointments with your larger vendors, and spend the time going through their either showroom or their booth. And because we love it that we can bring so much stuff there, because there's no way I could bring the entire catalog on the road with me. And, it's nice to have a showroom that you can present a lot of the categories and a lot of things. So if you've got a new person coming in, you can really go over a lot of different things with this new customer. But I think making appointments is key. And then I think,
especially to bigger vendors.
And then if there's no harm in setting aside a little walkthrough time.
No, I think you should. I think you're making a mistake if you don't, because there's always at every one of these shows, there's some fantastic new products that have just come out. And they're by one person in their garage. But, it turns out then that they eventually, end up getting bought out by a Shires. So finding those, we always looked for those new products, whether they were from a Shires or from a new company, one person in a table. Is because my case listeners, I've been doing this too long. Your customers, they want to see new products too, especially horse people love new products. We are in such a cool niche that way, because there's nobody who likes a new product better than a horse person.
Right. I agree. I think doing a little wandering and just kind of keeping a little free time for that. And also wandering in, the other disciplines too. I have got the strictly English stores that they're not even thinking about Western, but maybe they've got one or two customers that have started to ask, are you going to carry some Western?
There's a lot more hunter jumpers wearing cowboy boots and belt than there ever has been in the past.
Absolutely. And again, I experienced that this weekend at a show. There's a customer that has kind of been bugging my store to bring some Western in. And I said, Shires has some really nice new Western products, and it's something we never thought we would be dabbling in. But it's really been doing well. And
that's because more and more people are crossing over too.
Yeah.
Riding both.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife never rode Western. Now she has a Western saddle she loves,
Oh,
so
okay. Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, so taking some time and looking at some of the great Western pieces and companies that are there too, doesn't hurt. If you're going to make the trip, then for sure, kind of absorb everything.
I will give you a piece of advice if you're heading to Dallas next week. If you want to find the new providers, the new vendors, they are always on the outside walls. Mm-hmm. That's where you'll find them, is on the outside walls. So if you walk around the outside of the main floor, that's where you'll see the new vendors. That's your tip of the day.
Yeah.
Well, where can they find you there?
Where can I will be on the 10th floor in the permanent showroom. We are number 10923. We're right on the corner.
In those floors.
Yeah, I know. Again, you should, new people coming, get a map, kind of start get the book, make some notes, that sort of thing. I do when I've made a handful of appointments for next week, and I do like to send reminder emails, and then also a reminder in that email to where we're located. So a recommendation, for reps to do that too, just because people forget. But we're right on the corner, and yeah, we're really excited to be there. We'll be there the whole time, and can't wait to see everybody.
And if you're like me, you'll lose that book about 16 times. Get about 16 more books before you're done.
Yes. Well, thankfully, there's plenty of people there that can help. Everybody's always so helpful at WESA, directions and things like that, and it's a great show. So,
well, thank you very much. What's the website for Shires?
So it's shop.shiresequestrian.com is our retail site. Of course, we do have a separate vendor portal for our retailers, as we were speaking of earlier, for, online wholesale ordering. And if you're setting up an account with Shires, then you automatically get, your account number and your information to log in there, and you can utilize that if you choose, or you could send your sales rep the orders that way too.
Very good. Well, everybody have a terrific time at the show next week in Dallas. Good luck. Have a lot of fun. I will not be there this time, but I know that Sophia, who you've heard on our various podcasts here, will be there, and many of the people, obviously, that we've had on this show will be there. So have fun there in Dallas. I highly advise you to follow Wisdom by WESA on a podcast player. That's where we put out an episode every Thursday. There'll only be 2 this month because it's show month. And we have a YouTube channel, and also WESATradeshow.com. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it, and happy buying. I usually say happy selling, but I'm going to say happy buying this time, and have fun next week.